Beneath the surface of our oceans lies a world so alien, so utterly removed from human experience that it might as well exist on another planet. This is not the bright, sunlit waters where dolphins play and coral reefs burst with color. This is the deep sea, a realm of crushing pressure, eternal darkness, and creatures so bizarre that they challenge our very understanding of what life can be. Today, we embark on a descent into the abyss, following the path that sunlight cannot travel, to discover why the deeper we go, the stranger and more terrifying life becomes. Our journey begins at the surface, where we're all familiar. Here, in the epipelagic zone, the upper 200 meters of the ocean, life is abundant and recognizable. Fish schools shimmer in the blue water. Sea turtles glide past. The sun penetrates these waters, enabling photosynthesis and supporting the foundation of the ocean's food web. The creatures here have eyes adapted to bright light, streamlined bodies for speed, and vibrant colors for communication and camouflage. This is the ocean we know from documentaries, aquariums, and beach vacations. But this zone represents less than 3% of the ocean's total volume. The remaining 97% tells a very different story. As we descend past 200 meters, we enter the twilight zone, properly called the mesopelagic zone. Here, between 200 and 1,000 meters deep, the transformation begins. The light that filters down from above grows dimmer with every meter. Blue wavelengths penetrate deepest, creating an eerie twilight realm where the laws of survival start to change. In this zone, we encounter our first truly strange adaptations. Many fish here have developed large, upward-facing eyes, perfect for detecting the faint silhouettes of prey swimming above them against the dim surface light. These are not the normal fish eyes we're used to seeing. They're tubular, fixed in their sockets, and often take up a significant portion of the fish's head. The hatchet fish exemplifies this twilight zone weirdness. Its body is compressed laterally, making it incredibly thin when viewed from the front, which helps it hide from predators below. But look at it from the side, and you'll see those enormous upward-facing eyes and a mouth that seems far too large for its body. Even stranger, the hatchet fish has photophores, specialized light-producing organs on its belly. This isn't for illumination in the traditional sense. This is counter-illumination, a camouflage technique where the fish produces light to match the faint glow from above, erasing its shadow and making it invisible to predators looking up. The deep sea, we're learning, is a place where light becomes a tool, a weapon, and a disguise. But the hatchet fish is just the beginning. As we continue our descent through the mesopelagic zone, we encounter the viper fish, a creature that looks like it swam out of a nightmare. Its teeth are so long that they cannot fit inside its mouth. Instead, they curve backward, creating a cage from which there is no escape once prey is caught. The viperfish's jaw can unhinge, allowing it to swallow prey nearly as large as itself, a necessary adaptation in a realm where meals are few and far between. Its body is dark, almost black, helping it disappear in the twilight. But those teeth, those impossibly long, needle-sharp teeth, they are what capture the imagination and inspire horror. Why are these creatures developing such extreme features? The answer lies in the fundamental challenge of life in the deep sea: scarcity. As we descend, food becomes increasingly rare. The abundant life of the surface zone is sustained by photosynthesis, but plants need light, and light is fading fast. The twilight zone exists on the scraps that fall from above. the marine snow of dead organisms, fecal matter, and detritus that drifts down from the productive surface waters. Predators in this zone must be opportunistic, able to capture and consume anything they encounter, because the next meal might be days or weeks away. Hence the oversized mouths, the long teeth, the expandable stomachs. These aren't just creepy features, they are survival tools honed by millions of years of evolution in an environment that offers no second chances. The twilight zone also introduces us to one of the deep sea's most important phenomena: bioluminescence. In a world with little to no sunlight, life has learned to make its own. Approximately 90% of deep-sea creatures can produce light through chemical reactions in their bodies. This light serves many purposes. Some use it to attract prey, dangling glowing lures in front of their mouths like living fishing rods. Others use it for communication, flashing patterns to attract mates or coordinate with others of their kind. Still others, like our hatchetfish, use it for camouflage. And some use it as a defense mechanism, creating bright flashes to startle predators or releasing glowing clouds to confuse attackers while making an escape. The anglerfish, which we'll encounter in even deeper waters, has perfected the art of bioluminescent hunting. The female anglerfish, far larger than the tiny male, carries a modified dorsal spine that extends forward over her head, tipped with a glowing lure called an esca. This lure contains bioluminescent bacteria that produce a steady glow. In the absolute darkness of the deep, this light is irresistible to small fish and crustaceans. They swim toward it, curious or hungry, and suddenly they're within range of the anglerfish's enormous jaws. Her mouth can open to incredible size, creating a suction force that pulls prey in before they even realize their mistake. But we haven't yet mentioned perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the anglerfish, its reproductive strategy. The males of many anglerfish species are tiny, sometimes 1/60th the size of the female. In the vast darkness of the deep ocean, finding a mate is nearly impossible. So evolution has created a horrifying solution. When a male finds a female, he bites into her flesh. His mouth fuses with her body. His circulatory system connects to hers, and he slowly degenerates, losing his eyes, his internal organs, his independence. He becomes nothing more than a parasite, a living sperm factory permanently attached to the female, ready to fertilize her eggs whenever she's ready to spawn. Multiple males can attach to a single female, creating a creature that is part fish, part grotesque colony. This isn't just creepy, it's a radical reimagining of what reproduction can be, driven by the desperate difficulty of finding mates in the endless dark. As we pass through the bottom of the mesopelagic zone and approach 1,000 meters, the last traces of sunlight disappear entirely. We are now entering the midnight zone, the bathypelagic zone, which extends from 1,000 to 4,000 meters deep. Here, in absolute darkness, the water pressure is crushing, measuring over 100 times the pressure at sea level. A human without protection would be instantly killed. The temperature hovers just above freezing. There's no light, no plant life, no easy food. And yet, life persists, and it becomes even stranger. The creatures of the midnight zone are adapted to a world of total darkness. Many have lost their eyes entirely, as eyes are useless without light and expensive to maintain in terms of energy. Instead, they rely on other senses. Some have developed extraordinarily sensitive lateral lines, organs that detect the tiniest movements in the water, allowing them to sense prey or predators without seeing them. Others use chemoreception, tasting and smelling the water for the molecular traces left by other organisms. In the midnight zone, touch, taste, and vibration become the primary senses. The gulper eel, also known as the pelican eel, embodies the alien nature of midnight zone life. Its mouth is enormous, far larger than its body, opening like a pelican's pouch to engulf prey. Its jaw is loosely hinged, allowing it to swing open to impossible angles. The gulper eel's stomach can expand to hold prey much larger than the eel itself. Its body tapers to a thin, whip-like tail that ends in a complex photophore, a light-producing organ that may serve to attract prey or mates. The gulper eel looks more like a swimming mouth than a fish, a grotesque distortion of the normal fish body plan, sculpted by the relentless pressure of deep sea scarcity. Another resident of these depths is the fangtooth fish, which, relative to body size, has the largest teeth of any fish in the ocean. Its teeth are so large that it has special sockets in its skull to accommodate them when its mouth is closed. Otherwise, they would pierce its own brain. The fangtooth is small, rarely longer than 6 inches, but it's all predator. Its dark body, massive teeth, and generally sinister appearance make it look like something from a horror movie. Yet it's perfectly adapted to its environment, using those teeth to grip prey in a realm where missing a meal could mean starvation. The Midnight Zone also hosts the giant squid, a creature that has terrified sailors and inspired legends for centuries. Growing up to 13 meters long and weighing over 600 pounds, the giant squid is one of the largest invertebrates on Earth. Its eyes are the size of dinner plates, the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, capable of detecting the faintest bioluminescent glow in the pitch-black depths. Its 8 arms and 2 longer feeding tentacles are lined with serrated suckers that leave circular scars on the whales that fight with them. For most of human history, the giant squid was considered a myth, a creature from sailors' tall tales. It wasn't until 2004 that scientists captured the first photographs of a live giant squid in its natural habitat, and not until 2012 that video footage was obtained. Even now, much of its life remains a mystery. How does it hunt? How does it reproduce? How long does it live? The giant squid reminds us that the deep ocean still holds secrets, creatures we barely understand living lives we can hardly imagine. But the giant squid isn't even the largest squid in the ocean. That title belongs to the colossal squid, Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni, which inhabits even deeper waters around Antarctica. The colossal squid is shorter than the giant squid, but much heavier, with some specimens estimated to weigh up to 1,500 pounds. Its tentacles are armed not just with suckers, but with sharp hooks that rotate, designed to grip struggling prey with a strength that seems impossible. The colossal squid has the largest beak of any squid, strong enough to cut through steel cable. Its eyes, like the giant squid's, are enormous, with light organs surrounding them that may serve to illuminate prey. Very few intact colossal squids have been recovered. Most of our knowledge comes from dissecting specimens found in the stomachs of sperm whales, their only known predator. The colossal squid represents the apex predator of the deep midnight zone, a creature so perfectly adapted to extreme conditions that it has become something almost inconceivable to surface dwellers. The deeper we go, the more we notice a pattern in the appearance of these creatures. Large mouths, big teeth, expandable stomachs, dark or transparent bodies, reduced or absent eyes, bioluminescent organs, and overall, a quality that humans interpret as grotesque or nightmarish. But why do these specific features emerge? The answer lies in the intersection of physical conditions and evolutionary pressure. First, let's consider pressure. At 4,000 meters, the pressure is approximately 400 times greater than at sea level. That's roughly 8,000 pounds per square inch. For creatures that live at these depths, this pressure is normal. They're adapted to it from the cellular level up. Their bodies contain no air spaces that would collapse. Their proteins and cell membranes are structured differently than those of surface creatures, remaining flexible and functional under conditions that would destroy surface organisms. But this adaptation comes at a cost. Deep-sea creatures cannot survive rapid ascension to the surface. When brought up too quickly, the pressure drop causes gases dissolved in their tissues to expand rapidly, similar to decompression sickness in human divers. This is why deep-sea specimens often arrive at the surface dead and distorted, adding to their alien appearance. The cold is another factor. Deep ocean water hovers between 2 and 4 degrees Celsius. Cold water holds more oxygen than warm water, which is beneficial, but it also slows metabolism. Deep sea creatures tend to have slow metabolisms, moving slowly, growing slowly, reproducing slowly. This gives them an almost ghostly quality when observed, as if they're moving through a different time stream than surface creatures. Their slow movements are adaptations to conserve energy in a food-poor environment. Every calorie counts when the next meal might be weeks away. The darkness is perhaps the most influential factor in shaping deep-sea life. Without light, the entire structure of the ecosystem changes. On the surface and in shallow waters, photosynthesis by phytoplankton and algae forms the base of the food web. These primary producers convert sunlight into energy, which is then consumed by zooplankton, which are eaten by small fish, which are eaten by larger fish, and so on. But in the deep sea, there is no photosynthesis. The base of the food web is marine snow, the constant rain of organic material from above. Dead plankton, fish scales, fecal pellets, mucus, and other detritus drift down through the water column, and deep-sea creatures have evolved to catch and consume these falling particles. However, marine snow decreases with depth. Much of it is consumed or decomposed before it reaches the deepest zones. This creates a gradient of decreasing food availability that corresponds exactly with increasing creature strangeness. In the twilight zone, there's still enough food to support relatively robust populations. But in the midnight zone, food is scarce enough that extreme adaptations are necessary. And in the abyssal and hadal zones which we're about to enter, food is so rare that life takes on forms that seem barely alive at all. As we descend past 4,000 meters, we enter the abyssal zone, which extends from 4,000 to 6,000 meters. The abyssal plain covers more than 50% of the Earth's surface, making it the largest habitat on the planet. Yet, it's also one of the least explored. More humans have walked on the moon than have visited the deepest parts of the ocean. The abyssal zone is a desert of soft sediment, barely disturbed by currents, covered in the accumulated ooze of millions of years of marine snow. The pressure here exceeds 500 times surface pressure. The temperature is consistently near freezing, and the isolation is profound. The creatures of the abyssal zone are adapted to extreme scarcity. Many are scavengers, waiting motionless on the seafloor for something to fall from above. When a whale dies at the surface, its body sinks, and when it reaches the abyssal plain, it becomes a feast that can sustain a localized ecosystem for decades. sleeper sharks patrol these depths, moving slowly through the dark, their metabolisms so reduced that they barely qualify as active predators. Hagfish, primitive eel-like creatures that are technically not even fish, swarm over any carcass that reaches the bottom, burrowing inside to consume it from within. The hagfish can tie itself in knots to gain leverage while feeding, and it can produce extraordinary amounts of slime when threatened, enough to clog the gills of potential predators. It's a scavenger adapted to a world where waste is unthinkable. Every bit of organic material must be consumed. The abyssal zone also hosts sea cucumbers, sea pigs, and other echinoderms that crawl across the seafloor, processing sediment to extract any remaining organic material. These creatures move slowly, almost imperceptibly, their metabolisms tuned to the sparse food supply. They may go months between meals, surviving on stored energy reserves and extraordinarily efficient metabolism. One of the strangest groups of abyssal creatures is the sea spiders, or pycnogonids. These are not true spiders, but they share the same basic body plan. A tiny central body with long, spindly legs extending in all directions. Deep-sea pycnogonids can have leg spans exceeding 70 centimeters, while their bodies remain tiny. They look like walking nightmares, all legs and no substance, stalking across the abyssal plain on limbs that seem too fragile to support them. Their guts extend into their legs because their central body is too small to contain them. They feed on soft-bodied invertebrates, using their long proboscis to suck out the fluids. They embody the principle that in the deep sea, the normal rules of body structure don't apply. The abyssal zone also introduces us to creatures that challenge our definition of animal versus plant. The deep sea is home to numerous species of glass sponges, which build elaborate skeletons from silica, creating structures that look more like art installations than living creatures. These sponges can live for thousands of years, filtering the sparse nutrients from the water with remarkable efficiency. Some species form colonies that can reach several meters in height, creating complex frameworks that provide habitat for other deep-sea organisms. When these sponges die, their glass skeletons remain, building up over millennia to form reefs of silica that provide structure in the otherwise featureless abyssal plain. As we approach the deepest parts of the ocean, we must confront a question. Why does life in the deep sea appear so creepy to human observers? The answer is partly psychological and partly evolutionary. Humans evolved in terrestrial environments with abundant light, moderate temperatures, and atmospheric pressure. Our brains are wired to recognize familiar body plans, facial features, and proportions as normal or safe. When we encounter creatures that violate these expectations, creatures with disproportionately large mouths, transparent bodies, or bodies that seem to be all teeth, our threat detection systems activate. We perceive them as dangerous or disgusting because they're so different from what our brains categorize as normal. But there's more to it than that. Many deep-sea creatures possess features that in surface creatures would indicate disease, injury, or parasitism. Bloated bodies, protruding eyes, exposed teeth, asymmetrical features, these are signs of illness in terrestrial animals. Our instinct to avoid sick or dying creatures translates into revulsion when we see deep sea fish with these features, even though they're perfectly healthy by deep sea standards. The anglerfish with its parasitic males, the hagfish with its slime, the gulper eel with its grotesquely oversized mouth, all trigger our disgust response because they resemble conditions that, in our evolutionary environment, signaled danger or contamination. Additionally, many deep-sea creatures are predators with features that emphasize their predatory nature. Large teeth, expandable jaws, and dead-looking eyes all signal danger to our primate brains. We're descended from creatures that needed to identify and avoid predators, and deep-sea predators have evolved features that, by coincidence, perfectly match our instinctive markers of threat. The viperfish's teeth aren't meant to scare us. They're meant to hold on to prey in a realm where every meal counts. But to our eyes, they're terrifying because teeth are weapons, and visible weapons signal danger. There's also an element of the uncanny valley at play. Many deep-sea creatures are fish, and we know what fish are supposed to look like. We have a mental template for fish: streamlined body, regular fins, eyes on the sides of the head, a proportional mouth. When we see deep-sea fish that violate this template, that have bodies that are too long or too compressed, heads that are too large, mouths that won't close, our brains register them as wrong. They're close enough to the category of fish that we recognize them as such, but different enough that they create cognitive dissonance. This uncanny quality makes them seem not just strange, but fundamentally wrong, and that wrongness translates into creepiness. Now we approach the final frontier of the ocean, the Hadal Zone, named after Hades, the Greek underworld. This zone comprises the ocean trenches, the deepest parts of the ocean, extending from 6,000 meters to the maximum known depth of nearly 11,000 meters in the Challenger Deep of the Mariana Trench. The pressure at these depths exceeds 1,000 times surface pressure, more than 15,000 pounds per square inch. The temperature is 1 to 4 degrees Celsius. The isolation is total. These trenches are separated from each other by thousands of kilometers, creating island-like habitats where species evolve in isolation. Until recently, scientists believed the Hadal Zone might be lifeless, that the pressure would simply be too great for any organism to survive. They were wrong. Life has found a way into even these most extreme environments. Amphipods, shrimp-like crustaceans, thrive in the trenches, growing to sizes far larger than their shallow-water relatives. Snailfish, the deepest living fish known to science, have been recorded at depths exceeding 8,000 meters. These snailfish are small, translucent creatures with soft, gelatinous bodies and no swim bladders. They move slowly through the trench waters, feeding on amphipods and other small prey. The Hadal Zone represents the absolute limit of multicellular life on Earth. The creatures here are adapted to conditions more extreme than anywhere else in the ocean. Their cell membranes contain specialized compounds that remain flexible under crushing pressure. Their proteins are stabilized by unique molecular structures that prevent them from being crushed. They produce trimethylamine oxide, a compound that counteracts the protein-damaging effects of pressure. They are, in a very real sense, alien life that has evolved to thrive in conditions lethal to all other forms. One of the most remarkable discoveries in recent years is the existence of active scavenging communities in the Hadal Zone. When researchers deployed baited cameras in the Kermadec Trench, they recorded vast swarms of amphipods descending on the bait within hours. Thousands of these creatures, each several inches long, converged on the food source, demonstrating that even at these extreme depths, there are mobile, active predators and scavengers waiting for any opportunity to feed. The speed of their response suggests that food is scarce enough that even a small carcass becomes a major event, drawing creatures from a wide area. The Hadal Zone also hosts bacteria and archaea, that represent some of the most extreme extremophiles on Earth. These microorganisms can survive and reproduce under conditions that would sterilize most other life forms. They feed on the organic material that settles in the trenches and on the chemicals released by hydrothermal vents. Some of these microorganisms can survive pressures exceeding those found anywhere in the ocean, suggesting that life could potentially exist even deeper in the crust of the Earth itself if liquid water exists there. The discovery of life in the Hadal Zone has profound implications for our understanding of where life can exist. If life can survive the crushing pressure, frigid temperatures, and total darkness of the deepest trenches, then it could potentially survive in the subsurface oceans of icy moons like Europa or Enceladus. The deep sea isn't just a strange environment on Earth, it's a window into what alien life might look like, a testing ground for the limits of biology itself. Throughout our descent, we've seen a clear pattern. As depth increases, food decreases, pressure increases, light disappears, and the creatures become increasingly specialized, increasingly strange, increasingly creepy to human eyes. But we should ask ourselves, are these creatures really creepy, or are they simply perfectly adapted to their environment? The anglerfish isn't a monster. It's a highly efficient predator in a realm where efficiency is survival. The gulper eel isn't grotesque. It's beautifully evolved to capture any prey it encounters in a food-poor environment. The giant squid isn't a nightmare. It's an apex predator that has carved out an ecological niche in the most challenging habitat on Earth. Our perception of these creatures as creepy says more about us than about them. We're surface dwellers, adapted to light and warmth and abundant food. When we encounter life that has adapted to the opposite conditions, life that has evolved in darkness and cold and scarcity, we see it through the lens of our own environment and find it wanting. But these creatures aren't failures. They're successes. Every one of them represents a lineage that has survived for millions of years in conditions we can barely imagine, let alone tolerate. There's also a philosophical dimension to the question of why deep sea creatures get creepier with depth. As we descend, we're not just moving through physical space, we're moving through a gradient of the familiar to the alien. The surface ocean is within the realm of human experience. We can swim in it. We can dive in it with minimal equipment. We can see it from boats and beaches. The creatures there are part of our cultural consciousness. But the deep ocean is fundamentally inaccessible to us. We can only visit it in specialized submarines, and even then, we're separated from it by thick walls of steel or titanium. The creatures of the deep are alien not just in appearance but in existence. They live in a realm we cannot naturally enter, and that inaccessibility breeds mystery and fear. Humans have always feared the unknown. We tell stories about monsters in the dark, about creatures lurking just beyond the firelight. The deep ocean is the last great darkness on Earth, the last place where monsters could plausibly hide. And unlike the monsters of legend, the monsters of the deep are real. They're not supernatural, they're not magical, but they're every bit as strange as anything in mythology. A viperfish with teeth longer than its head. An anglerfish with males parasitically fused to her body. A gulper eel that's 90% mouth. These creatures would be unbelievable if we hadn't photographed them, filmed them, and brought specimens to the surface. The deep sea has given us real monsters, and that's perhaps more unsettling than any fiction could be. Yet there's also a beauty in these creatures, a terrible alien beauty. They represent the power of evolution to solve problems in ways we could never anticipate. They demonstrate that life is far more flexible, far more resilient than we once believed. They prove that the universe is stranger than we imagine, and perhaps stranger than we can imagine. The deep-sea creatures aren't creepy because they're evil or malevolent. They're creepy because they reveal the vast possibilities of life. Possibilities that our surface-dwelling brains aren't equipped to easily process. Consider the frilled shark, a creature that appears to have barely changed in 80 million years. It looks like something from the age of dinosaurs because, essentially, it is. With its eel-like body, frilled gills, and rows of needle-like teeth, it resembles a sea serpent from old maritime legends. The frilled shark lives at depths between 100 and 1,500 meters, occupying a zone where evolutionary pressures have remained relatively constant for millions of years. It's a living fossil, a window into the ancient past, and its primitive features contribute to its unsettling appearance. When we look at a frilled shark, we're looking at a design that worked so well it never needed to change, a design optimized for the deep sea long before humans existed. The vampire squid, despite its terrifying name, is actually a relatively harmless creature that feeds on marine snow and detritus. Its name comes from its dark color and the webbing between its arms, which it can pull over itself like a cloak, creating a defensive posture that hides its body and leaves only its arms visible. The vampire squid has the largest eyes relative to body size of any animal, enormous blue orbs that can detect the faintest light. It can also produce bioluminescent displays, flashing patterns of light from organs covering its body, possibly to confuse predators. When threatened, it can turn itself inside out, exposing rows of fleshy spines that make it look even more bizarre. The vampire squid lives at depths between 600 and 900 meters, in a zone of minimum oxygen where few other predators can survive. It's adapted to extremely low oxygen levels, thriving in conditions that would suffocate most other creatures. One of the least understood aspects of deep-sea ecology is how these creatures find mates. In the vast, dark expanse of the deep ocean, encountering another member of your species is extraordinarily unlikely. Some species, like the anglerfish, have evolved radical solutions involving parasitic males. Others use bioluminescent displays, flashing specific patterns that identify them to potential mates. Still, others release pheromones, chemical signals that spread through the water and can be detected over great distances. Some deep-sea creatures are hermaphroditic, possessing both male and female reproductive organs, which doubles their chances of successful reproduction when they do encounter another individual. Many deep-sea species also have extended reproductive cycles and can store sperm for long periods, allowing them to fertilize eggs weeks or months after mating. Some are broadcast spawners, releasing eggs and sperm into the water column and letting currents mix them, a strategy that seems almost hopeless given the vastness of the ocean, but apparently works well enough to sustain populations. The reproductive strategies of deep-sea creatures are as strange as their appearances, shaped by the same pressures of scarcity and isolation. The deep sea is also a realm of surprising interactions. Despite the scarcity of food, complex ecological relationships exist. Certain species of fish have been observed following each other, apparently using their companions as additional sensory inputs to detect prey or threats. Some amphipods live commensally with other creatures, sharing their captured food without providing any clear benefit in return. And then there are the symbiotic relationships between creatures and bioluminescent bacteria. Many deep-sea fish carry colonies of light-producing bacteria in specialized organs, providing the bacteria with nutrients and a safe home in exchange for light. These relationships demonstrate that even in the most extreme environments, cooperation and coexistence are viable strategies. Hydrothermal vents represent a special case in deep-sea ecology. These underwater geysers spew superheated water rich in minerals and chemicals, creating oases of life on the otherwise barren abyssal plain. The vents support unique ecosystems based not on photosynthesis but on chemosynthesis, where bacteria convert the chemicals in the vent water into energy. These bacteria form the base of a food web that includes giant tube worms, vent crabs, and specialized species of fish and octopus. The creatures living at hydrothermal vents are adapted to extreme temperatures, with some thriving in water exceeding 400 degrees Celsius. They demonstrate that life doesn't need sunlight, it just needs energy in some form and the right chemical building blocks. The giant tube worms that cluster around hydrothermal vents are particularly alien. They have no mouth, no digestive system, and no anus. Instead, they absorb chemicals from the vent water through their feathery plumes and pass them to colonies of bacteria living in their tissues. The bacteria process the chemicals and share the resulting energy with the worm. It's a symbiotic relationship so complete that the worm cannot survive without its bacterial partners. These tube worms can grow up to 8 feet long, and they may live for hundreds of years, making them among the longest-lived invertebrates known. When you look at a field of giant tube worms, white stalks topped with red plumes swaying in the vent currents, you're looking at a fundamentally different kind of life, one based on chemistry rather than light. Another hydrothermal vent resident is the yeti crab, a blind white crab covered in hair-like setae that host bacteria. The crab farms these bacteria, waving its claws in the vent water to provide them with nutrients, and then harvests them for food. It's a bizarre form of agriculture practiced by a crustacean in total darkness at crushing pressure. Yet another example of how life in the deep finds solutions to problems in ways that surface life never needed to explore. The exploration of the deep sea has accelerated dramatically in recent decades thanks to advances in technology. Remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, can descend to any depth in the ocean, sending back video and collecting specimens without risking human lives. Autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, can map the seafloor and track ocean currents without any human guidance. And new generations of manned submersibles are pushing the boundaries of how deep humans can go. Each expedition reveals new species, new behaviors, new mysteries. In 2019, explorer Victor Vescovo descended to the deepest point in every ocean, including a dive to the bottom of the Challenger Deep. At nearly 11 kilometers below the surface, he found plastic waste and observed amphipods, proving that human impact has reached even the most remote parts of the ocean, and that life persists even there. His expeditions discovered dozens of new species and collected samples of creatures never before seen by science. The fact that we're still discovering new life forms in the deep sea underscores how little we know about this vast realm. Genetic studies of deep-sea creatures have revealed surprising relationships and evolutionary patterns. Many deep-sea species are more closely related to surface species than their appearance would suggest, indicating that multiple lineages have independently colonized the deep sea and evolved similar solutions to similar problems, a process called convergent evolution. The large eyes of many deep-sea creatures, for instance, evolved independently in multiple fish lineages. The bioluminescence systems of different species are often biochemically distinct, suggesting they evolved separately in different groups. The deep sea is not a single community, but a collection of communities, each with its own evolutionary history. One of the most exciting areas of current research involves the microbiome of deep sea creatures. Like humans, deep sea organisms host complex communities of bacteria and other microorganisms. These microbial partners may play crucial roles in helping their hosts survive extreme conditions, possibly producing compounds that stabilize proteins under high pressure or metabolizing unusual food sources. Understanding these relationships could have applications beyond marine biology, potentially leading to new biomaterials, new industrial enzymes, or even new approaches to medicine. The deep sea also serves as a climate archive. The sediments on the abyssal plain contain layers of material dating back millions of years, preserving a record of ocean conditions, climate changes, and even asteroid impacts. By studying these sediments and the microfossils they contain, scientists can reconstruct Earth's climate history and improve models of future climate change. The deep sea isn't just a strange habitat for bizarre creatures, it's a library of Earth's history, written in layers of ooze. But the deep sea faces threats. Deep sea mining, the extraction of mineral nodules and other resources from the seafloor, could devastate ecosystems we barely understand. These nodules took millions of years to form, and the communities that live on and around them may be equally ancient. Once destroyed, they might never recover. There's also the issue of overfishing in the deep sea. Species like orange roughy and Chilean sea bass live in deep waters and grow slowly, making them extremely vulnerable to exploitation. Many deep sea fish stocks have already collapsed due to overfishing, and the slow reproduction rates of these species mean recovery could take decades or centuries. Climate change affects the deep sea as well. The ocean absorbs much of the excess heat and carbon dioxide produced by human activities. This absorption is causing the ocean to warm and acidify, changes that propagate into the deep. Warming can alter ocean circulation patterns, potentially disrupting the flow of nutrients to the deep sea. Acidification can make it harder for organisms to build shells and skeletons from calcium carbonate, affecting creatures from plankton to deep-sea corals. The deep sea may seem isolated from surface concerns, but it's intimately connected to the health of the entire ocean, and through the ocean, to the climate of the entire planet. As we conclude our journey into the abyss, we should reflect on what we've learned. The deep-sea creatures are creepy not because they're evil or malevolent, but because they're adapted to conditions so extreme that they've evolved features we find disturbing. Large mouths to catch rare prey, long teeth to hold on to meals, expandable stomachs to store food against future scarcity, transparent or black bodies for camouflage in a lightless world, bioluminescent organs for communication, hunting, and defense, reduced or absent eyes because sight is useless without light, slow metabolisms to conserve energy, gelatinous bodies to withstand pressure. Every creepy feature has a function. Every disturbing adaptation is a solution to a problem. The pattern of increasing strangeness with depth isn't random. It reflects the changing conditions as we descend. Each zone of the ocean presents different challenges, and life responds with appropriate adaptations. The twilight zone, with its dim light and moderate pressure, hosts creatures that are recognizably fish but with exaggerated features. The midnight zone, with its total darkness and high pressure, hosts creatures that barely resemble surface life. The abyssal zone, with its extreme pressure and near-freezing temperatures, hosts creatures that live at the edge of what's biologically possible. And the Hadal zone, the deepest part of the ocean, hosts creatures that represent the absolute limit of complex life on Earth. But perhaps the most important lesson is that the deep sea challenges our assumptions about life itself. We tend to think of life as something fragile, something that requires just the right conditions to exist. But the deep sea shows us that life is far more resilient than that. Life can exist in total darkness. Life can withstand crushing pressure. Life can survive on scraps of food so sparse that meals are separated by weeks. Life can thrive in freezing water, in scalding vent water, in water with no oxygen, in water saturated with toxic chemicals. Life, it turns out, is not fragile at all. Life is tenacious, adaptable, and endlessly creative. The creatures of the deep sea are not mistakes or monsters. They're pioneers, explorers who have colonized the last frontier on Earth and made it their home. They've evolved to fill every available niche, to exploit every possible food source, to survive in conditions we can barely imagine. They represent billions of years of evolution, countless generations of adaptation, and the extraordinary flexibility of biological systems. When we call these creatures creepy, we're really expressing our own limitations. Our brains evolved to understand the surface world, not the deep sea. We're adapted for light, warmth, and abundance, not darkness, cold, and scarcity. The creatures of the deep aren't creepy in any objective sense. They're simply optimized for a different environment than ours. To another deep sea creature, a viperfish is perfectly normal, even attractive. To a hagfish, slime is a brilliant defense mechanism, not a disgusting secretion. To an anglerfish, parasitic males are an elegant solution to the problem of finding mates in the vast dark. The deep sea reminds us that Earth is not one world but many. The surface, the shallows, the twilight zone, the midnight zone, the abyss, the trenches. Each is a distinct realm with its own rules, its own life forms, its own mysteries. We have explored less than 20% of the ocean floor. Millions of species remain undiscovered. Vast areas of the deep sea have never been visited by human instruments. We're only beginning to understand this alien world that covers most of our planet. As technology improves and exploration continues, we'll discover even stranger creatures, even more bizarre adaptations, even more extreme examples of life's flexibility. Each discovery will expand our understanding of what's possible, what's survivable, what's alive. The deep sea is an endless source of wonder and surprise, a place where evolution has conducted experiments we could never imagine. The creepiness of deep sea creatures is really a measure of our ignorance. As we learn more about these animals, as we understand their adaptations and their ecology, they become less frightening and more fascinating. The anglerfish with its parasitic males is no longer a horror but a marvel of reproductive strategy. The gulper eel with its enormous mouth is no longer grotesque but elegantly designed for its environment. The vampire squid with its cloak of webbing is no longer sinister but beautifully adapted for defense and feeding. Perhaps the most profound insight from studying the deep sea is that there is no such thing as a normal life form. Every creature on Earth, from bacteria to blue whales, is adapted to its specific environment. What seems normal to us, air-breathing, warm-blooded, seeing in visible light, is actually highly specialized for terrestrial life. The creatures of the deep sea aren't abnormal, they're differently normal. They're what life looks like when it evolves in the dark, under pressure, in the cold, with little food. And they're just as valid, just as successful, just as worthy of study and respect as any surface creature. The deep sea also offers hope. If life can survive and thrive in the most extreme environments on Earth, then it can probably survive and thrive elsewhere in the universe. The discovery of life in the deep sea has fundamentally changed our approach to astrobiology. We no longer assume that alien life must exist on Earth-like planets. It could exist in the ice-covered oceans of Europa. It could exist in the methane lakes of Titan. It could exist in the subsurface of Mars or in the clouds of Venus. The deep sea shows us that life finds a way, that given any source of energy and the right chemicals, biology will emerge and diversify. As our final thought, we should consider our responsibility to the deep sea. It's easy to dismiss these creatures as monsters, as things that are too alien to matter. But they're part of our world, part of our biosphere, part of the web of life that sustains our planet. The health of the deep sea affects the health of the surface ocean, which affects the climate, which affects every living thing on Earth. We cannot afford to ignore or destroy the deep sea just because it's out of sight. We must explore it, study it, understand it, and protect it. The deep sea is our planet's last great wilderness, a realm of darkness and wonder that has existed largely, unchanged for millions of years. The creatures that live there are living fossils, evolutionary experiments, and extremophiles that push the boundaries of what we thought was possible. They're creepy, yes, but they're also remarkable. They're terrifying, but they're also beautiful. They're alien, but they're also our relatives, distant cousins in the tree of life that all living things share. So why do deep-sea creatures get creepier the deeper you go? Because the conditions get more extreme, the challenges get more difficult, and the adaptations get more radical. Because scarcity breeds efficiency, and efficiency often looks strange to eyes adapted for abundance. Because darkness eliminates the need for features we consider normal, and emphasizes features we find disturbing. Because high pressure and low temperatures favor body plans that seem alien to surface dwellers. Because isolation and rarity lead it to reproductive strategies that violate our expectations. Because every meter of depth is another step away from the world we know, and another step into a world shaped by forces we rarely encounter. The deep sea is Earth's alien world, a place that proves we don't need to travel to other planets to encounter the truly strange and wonderful. We just need to look down, past the sunlight, past the twilight, into the eternal night of the abyss, where creatures beyond imagination live lives beyond understanding. They're not monsters, they're miracles, and they're waiting in the dark, living their strange lives, adapted to their strange world, perfect in their imperfection, beautiful in their horror, and absolutely, undeniably real. Let us now examine in greater detail the specific adaptations that make deep sea creatures so extraordinary, and explore more thoroughly the individual species that inhabit each zone. Understanding these creatures requires understanding not just what they look like, but how they live, how they hunt, how they reproduce, and how they've solved problems that would be insurmountable for surface creatures. Starting with the upper reaches of the deep sea, the mesopelagic or twilight zone, we find creatures that exist in a realm of perpetual dusk. The light that reaches this zone is not bright enough to support photosynthesis in most algae, but it's bright enough to see by if your eyes are adapted correctly. This creates a unique set of challenges. Predators can see prey silhouetted against the brighter water above, but prey can also see predators approaching from below. This has led to an evolutionary arms race of camouflage and detection. Many Twilight Zone creatures have evolved counter-illumination to perfection. The hatchetfish, which we mentioned earlier, has rows of photophores along its belly that precisely match the color and intensity of the downwelling light. But it's not just the hatchetfish. Lanternfish, which are among the most abundant vertebrates on Earth, also use counter-illumination. These small fish undertake the largest migration on the planet every single day. As darkness falls, they ascend from the depths to feed in the more productive surface waters. As dawn approaches, they descend back into the twilight zone to avoid surface predators. Billions of lanternfish participate in this migration, moving thousands of meters up and down every day, representing one of the largest movements of biomass on the planet. The lanternfish's photophores aren't just for camouflage. Each species has a unique pattern of lights, allowing members of the same species to recognize each other in the dim waters. It's a visual language written in bioluminescence, a way to say, "I'm one of you," in a realm where finding your own kind is extraordinarily difficult. The patterns are species-specific, even sex-specific in some cases, allowing males and females to find each other despite the vastness of the ocean. Another Twilight Zone resident, the barrelay fish or spookfish, has one of the most bizarre adaptations in the ocean. Its eyes are tubular and mounted inside its transparent head, pointing upward. The fish can see through the top of its own skull, which is filled with transparent fluid. This allows it to spot the silhouettes of prey above while keeping its eyes protected. Even more remarkably, recent research has shown that the barrelay can rotate its eyes forward when feeding, allowing it to see what it's eating. The transparent head, the tubular eyes, the ability to rotate them inside its skull, all of these features make the barrelay look like something designed by an alien engineer. Yet they're all products of natural selection operating in the unique environment of the Twilight Zone. The stoplight loosejaw is another Twilight Zone marvel. Most bioluminescence in the ocean is blue or green, the colors that travel best through water. But the stoplight loosejaw produces red light, which is invisible to most deep-sea creatures because they lack the photoreceptors to detect it. This means the loosejaw can illuminate prey without alerting them to its presence. It's like having a flashlight that only you can see, giving it a massive advantage when hunting. The loosejaw's mouth is also remarkable, hinged in a way that allows it to open to an angle exceeding 100 degrees, and equipped with long, needle-like teeth perfect for gripping slippery prey. As we descend into the midnight zone, the bathypelagic realm, we encounter creatures that have abandoned any pretense of normalcy. The dragonfish family, which includes several species, represents some of the most fearsome predators in the deep. They're relatively small, rarely exceeding a foot in length, but they're all teeth and attitude. Their mouths are lined with fangs so large and numerous that they cannot fully close their jaws. Some species have a long barbel extending from their chin, tipped with a glowing lure that attracts prey. The dragonfish can unhinge its jaw and expand its stomach to swallow prey nearly as large as itself, a necessary adaptation in a realm where you must eat whatever you can catch, regardless of size. The black dragonfish exhibits extreme sexual dimorphism. the females grow much larger than the males and have fully developed teeth and jaws. The males, however, are much smaller, lack functional teeth, and may not feed at all as adults. Their sole purpose is reproduction. Once they mature and mate, they die. This pattern of males living only to reproduce appears in several deep sea species, a strategy that makes sense in an environment where food is scarce and finding mates is difficult. Why waste resources maintaining a large male when a small one can accomplish the same reproductive goal? The telescope fish is another midnight zone species with distinctive features. Its eyes are enormous, pointed forward, and capable of gathering the tiniest amounts of light. Its body is covered with scales that contain mirrors, reflecting any available light and possibly helping with camouflage. The telescope fish is a sit-and-wait predator, hovering motionless in the water column, using its exceptional vision to spot prey. When a target comes within range, it strikes with surprising speed, its large mouth engulfing the prey in an instant. The midnight zone is also home to the cookie-cutter shark, a small shark with a unique feeding strategy. It's a parasite of sorts, attaching itself to large fish, dolphins, and even whales, and using its specialized mouth to carve out a plug of flesh. The resulting wound is circular, like it was made with a cookie cutter, hence the name. The cookie cutter shark has bioluminescent photophores on its belly, but there's a dark patch on its throat that doesn't light up. When viewed from below, this dark patch looks like a small fish, attracting larger predators. When they come to investigate, the cookie cutter shark attacks, taking its bite and fleeing. It's a bold strategy, attacking creatures many times its size, but it works well enough that cookie cutter sharks are found in deep waters around the world. The gulper eel, which we've mentioned, deserves more detailed examination. Its scientific name, Uropharynx pelechinoides, means pelican with a wide pharynx, perfectly describing its most notable feature. The gulper eel's mouth and stomach make up the majority of its body volume. It swims through the dark with its enormous mouth open, essentially trawling for prey. Its jaw is loosely articulated, held together by flexible ligaments that allow it to stretch to incredible dimensions. When it encounters prey, the gulper eel doesn't bite or chew. It simply engulfs, swallowing the prey whole and storing it in its expandable stomach. The gulper eel's tail is long and whip-like, ending in a complex photophore that can produce bright flashes of light. The function of this light organ isn't entirely clear. It might attract prey, or it might serve as a lure for mates, or it might be a defensive mechanism, startling predators with sudden bright flashes. Like many aspects of deep-sea biology, the exact purpose of the gulper eel's tail light remains mysterious, a question waiting to be answered by future research. One of the most successful groups of deep-sea predators is the squid family. While the giant squid and colossal squid are the most famous, there are dozens of other deep-sea squid species, each with its own unique adaptations. The vampire squid, despite its name, doesn't feed on blood. It's a detritivore, using its 8 arms to sweep particles of marine snow toward its mouth. The vampire squid can retract its arms into its body cavity, exposing rows of fleshy spines that make it appear larger and more threatening. It can also eject a cloud of bioluminescent mucus when threatened, creating a glowing decoy that distracts predators while the squid makes its escape. The octopods of the deep sea are equally remarkable. The Dumbo octopus, named for the ear-like fins protruding from its head, lives at depths exceeding 7,000 meters, making it one of the deepest living octopods known. It hovers above the seafloor, using its fins to propel itself, and drops down to capture prey. The Dumbo octopus is relatively small, gelatinous, and almost transparent, with very little muscular structure compared to shallow water octopods. Its body is adapted to withstand immense pressure, with protein structures that remain stable under conditions that would crush surface organisms. Another deep-sea octopod, the paper nautilus or argonaut, has evolved a different strategy. The female creates a delicate, paper-thin shell that she uses to trap air when she comes near the surface, allowing her to control her buoyancy. The male argonaut is tiny compared to the female, and like the male anglerfish, he exists primarily to reproduce. The male has a specialized arm called a hectocotylus that he detaches and leaves with the female, essentially giving her his genetic material without remaining present. For many years, scientists thought the hectocotylus was a parasitic worm, not realizing it was actually a detached octopus arm. The deep sea is also home to numerous species of jellyfish and siphonophores, many of which grow to enormous sizes. The lion's mane jellyfish can have tentacles exceeding 100 feet in length, making it one of the longest animals on Earth. Deep-sea jellyfish often have reduced or absent pigmentation, making them appear ghostly or crystalline. Many have long, trailing tentacles armed with stinging cells that can paralyze prey. Some deep-sea jellies are bioluminescent, producing beautiful displays of light when disturbed. These light shows may serve to startle predators, or to attract secondary predators that will attack whatever disturbed the jellyfish. Siphonophores are particularly strange because they're not individual organisms, but colonies of specialized individuals called zooids, each performing a specific function. Some zooids handle feeding, others reproduction, others defense, and others provide propulsion. The Portuguese man-o'-war is a familiar example, but deep-sea siphonophores can be far larger and more complex. The giant siphonophore, discovered in 2020 off the coast of Australia, formed a spiral shape exceeding 150 feet in length, making it potentially the longest animal ever recorded. It existed at depths around 600 meters, its body creating a living curtain that trapped prey. The deep sea is not just a habitat for fish, squid, and jellies. It's also home to numerous species of crustaceans, many of which have evolved to become apex predators in their depth range. The mantis shrimp, while more common in shallow waters, has deep-sea relatives that pack the same powerful punch. Mantis shrimp have specialized appendages that can strike with incredible speed and force, enough to shatter the shells of prey or the glass of aquarium tanks. Deep-sea mantis shrimp use these weapons to capture prey and defend their territory, just as their shallow water cousins do. Isopods, relatives of terrestrial pillbugs, reach enormous sizes in the deep sea. The giant isopod can grow to over 16 inches in length and weigh over 3 pounds, making it hundreds of times larger than its terrestrial relatives. These creatures are scavengers, feeding on the carcasses of whales, fish, and squid that sink to the seafloor. They can survive for months without food, entering a state of reduced metabolism that allows them to wait for the next meal. When food does arrive, giant isopods swarm over it, eating so much that they can barely move. Their large size may be an example of deep-sea gigantism, a phenomenon where creatures in the deep grow larger than their shallow water relatives, possibly because larger size provides better temperature regulation in cold water or because it allows for more efficient energy storage during times of plenty. Copepods, tiny crustaceans that form a major part of the ocean's zooplankton, also have deep sea representatives, and some of them are far from tiny. Deep-sea copepods can reach several inches in length, and many are predators rather than filter feeders. They have large eyes for detecting prey, powerful mandibles for grasping it, and fast swimming speeds for pursuing it. Some deep-sea copepods are parasites, attaching themselves to fish or other creatures and feeding on their tissues. The line between predator, scavenger, and parasite is often blurred in the deep sea, where any strategy that provides food is worth exploiting. The deep sea floor, the benthic realm, hosts its own suite of strange creatures. Sea pens, relatives of corals, root themselves in the soft sediment and extend feathery branches into the current, capturing passing particles of food. They can retract completely into the sediment when threatened, disappearing from view in seconds. Sea pens are bioluminescent, producing waves of light that travel along their branches when disturbed. The purpose of this display isn't entirely clear, but it may serve to startle predators or to attract secondary predators that will chase away whatever threatened the sea pen. Brittle stars, relatives of starfish, are among the most abundant creatures on the deep sea floor. They have thin, whip-like arms that they use to capture food and pull themselves across the sediment. Some species live in dense aggregations, with thousands of individuals carpeting the seafloor. Others are solitary, hiding in crevices and extending their arms to snatch passing prey. Brittle stars are incredibly fragile, their arms breaking off easily when grabbed, but they can regenerate lost arms over time. This fragility is actually a defense mechanism, allowing them to sacrifice an arm and escape when attacked. Sea cucumbers, despite their unassuming appearance, are remarkably diverse in the deep sea. Some species are mobile, crawling across the seafloor on small tube feet. Others are sessile, rooting themselves in place and extending feeding tentacles into the water. Many deep-sea sea cucumbers are deposit feeders, ingesting sediment and extracting any organic material from it. They're the vacuum cleaners of the abyss, processing vast amounts of sediment and recycling nutrients back into the food web. Some species have evolved bizarre defensive mechanisms. When threatened, certain sea cucumbers can expel their internal organs through their anus, distracting predators with a tangle of sticky, sometimes toxic tissues. The sea cucumber then regenerates its organs over several weeks. The deep sea floor is also home to numerous species of worms, from tiny nematodes to giant polychaetes. Bobbit worms, which live in burrows in the sediment, can grow to 10 feet in length. They remain hidden except for their powerful jaws, which extend above the sediment surface, waiting for prey. When a fish or other creature comes within reach, the bobbit worm strikes with incredible speed, grabbing the prey and pulling it down into its burrow. The strike is so fast that it's nearly invisible to the human eye, happening in milliseconds. Bobbit worms are named after Lorena Bobbitt, and the reason for that name is best left to the imagination. Deep-sea corals are another benthic group worth exploring. Unlike their shallow-water relatives, deep-sea corals don't depend on symbiotic algae for nutrition. They're carnivorous, capturing zooplankton and other small prey with their tentacles. Deep-sea coral reefs can be enormous, extending for miles and providing habitat for hundreds of other species. These reefs grow incredibly slowly, sometimes adding only millimeters per year, making them among the oldest living structures on Earth. Some deep-sea coral colonies are thousands of years old, growing steadily in the cold darkness, creating complex three-dimensional structures that serve as oases of biodiversity on the otherwise featureless abyssal plain. The fish of the abyssal zone deserve special attention. The tripod fish has evolved one of the most unusual adaptations in the deep sea. It has 3 enormously elongated fin rays, one from each pelvic fin and one from its tail, which it uses as stilts to stand on the seafloor. The tripod fish positions itself facing into the current, its pectoral fins extended upward like antennae, feeling for any particle of food drifting past. When it detects food, it lunges forward, grabs it, and then settles back onto its tripod. This strategy allows the tripod fish to feed without expending energy swimming, an important consideration in the food-poor abyss. Many tripod fish are hermaphrodites, possessing both male and female reproductive organs, which eliminates the need to find a mate of the opposite sex. The rat-tail or grenadier fish are among the most common fish in the abyssal zone. They have large heads, tapering bodies, and long rat-like tails, hence the name. Rat-tails are opportunistic feeders, eating whatever they can find, from marine snow to small invertebrates to carrion. They're often the first fish to arrive at bait deployed by researchers, suggesting they're constantly searching for food. Rat-tails produce sounds by vibrating their swim bladders, possibly for communication or mate attraction. In the darkness of the abyss, sound becomes an important sense, and many deep sea fish can produce and detect acoustic signals. The abyssal zone also hosts the bizarre spoon-nose eel, which has a bulbous, transparent swelling at the end of its snout. The purpose of this structure isn't entirely clear, but it may house sensory organs or glands. The spoon-nose eel's body is long and ribbon-like, allowing it to undulate through the water with minimal effort. Like many deep-sea creatures, it's dark in color and has reduced eyes, relying more on other senses to navigate and hunt. Let us now turn our attention to the Hadal zone, the deepest parts of the ocean, where life exists under the most extreme conditions found on Earth. The trenches are long, narrow depressions in the seafloor, formed where tectonic plates collide and one is forced beneath the other. The Mariana Trench, the deepest known trench, reaches nearly 11,000 meters at its deepest point, the Challenger Deep. Other major trenches include the Tonga Trench, the Philippine Trench, the Kermadec Trench, and the Japan Trench. Each trench is isolated from the others, creating separate evolutionary laboratories where species evolve in isolation. The Hadal zone was named after Hades because early scientists assumed it was lifeless, a realm of the dead. They couldn't have been more wrong. Hadal trenches are actually hotspots of activity, at least by deep-sea standards. Organic material tends to accumulate in trenches, funneled down by underwater currents and avalanches, creating relatively food-rich environments compared to the surrounding abyssal plain. This accumulated organic material supports diverse communities of amphipods, worms, sea cucumbers, and fish. Hadal amphipods are particularly remarkable. These shrimp-like crustaceans can reach lengths of over 10 inches in the deepest trenches, far larger than their shallow water relatives. They're voracious scavengers, descending on any food source within hours. Cameras deployed in the Kermadec Trench have recorded thousands of amphipods swarming over bait, their bodies covering every available surface, fighting with each other for access to food. These amphipods have specialized biochemistry that allows them to survive Hadal pressures. Their cell membranes contain high levels of unsaturated fats, which remain fluid under pressure, and their proteins are stabilized by high concentrations of small organic molecules that prevent pressure-induced denaturation. The deepest living fish ever recorded is the Hadal snailfish, found at depths exceeding 8,200 meters in the Mariana Trench. Snailfish are small, tadpole-shaped fish with gelatinous bodies and no scales. They lack swim bladders, as air-filled structures cannot exist at these depths. Instead, their bodies are essentially isosmotic with the surrounding water, meaning they experience no net pressure gradient. The Hadal snailfish feeds on amphipods and other small invertebrates, and it's surprisingly active for a creature living under such extreme pressure. Its body is mostly water and organic compounds, with very little mineralized tissue. This gives it a ghostly, almost transparent appearance. Recent research suggests there may be a depth limit for fish. The proteins that make up fish bodies become unstable below certain pressures, no matter how they're stabilized. This pressure limit appears to be around 8,500 meters, which corresponds closely to the deepest depths at which fish have been observed. Below this depth, only invertebrates can survive. This doesn't mean life cannot exist deeper, only that vertebrate life, with its particular biochemistry and structural requirements, reaches its limit around this depth. Invertebrates, with their different body plans and biochemistries, can survive deeper. The deepest living organisms of all are microbes. Bacteria and archaea have been found in sediment samples from the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench, and even in rock samples from the oceanic crust beneath the trenches. These microorganisms survive on the chemical energy available from minerals and dissolved gases, independent of any surface productivity. They represent the bottom of the bottom, the absolute foundation of life in the trenches. Without these microbes, the trenches would be even more barren as they break down organic material and recycle nutrients, making them available to larger organisms. Hydrothermal vents in the deep sea deserve more extensive discussion, as they represent a fundamentally different type of ecosystem. While most deep sea life ultimately depends on organic material falling from the surface, vent communities are based on chemosynthesis, the conversion of chemical energy into biological energy. Hydrothermal vents form at mid-ocean ridges and other areas of tectonic activity, where seawater seeps into cracks in the seafloor, is heated by magma, and then erupts back into the ocean loaded with dissolved minerals and gases. The water emerging from black smoker vents can exceed 400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. White smoker vents are cooler, around 250 degrees Celsius, but still far too hot for most life. Yet bacteria thrive in the mixing zone where hot vent water meets cold seawater, using the chemical energy from hydrogen sulfide, methane, and other compounds to fix carbon and produce organic molecules. These bacteria form the base of a food web that includes some of the strangest creatures in the ocean. Giant tube worms, Riftia pachyptyla, are perhaps the most iconic vent creatures. They can grow to 8 feet in length, making them among the largest invertebrates in the deep sea. They have no mouth, no gut, and no anus. Instead, they absorb hydrogen sulfide and oxygen through their bright red plumes, and pass these chemicals to symbiotic bacteria living in a specialized organ called the trophosome. The bacteria oxidize the hydrogen sulfide, using the energy released to fix carbon dioxide into organic molecules. They share these molecules with the tube worm, which receives all its nutrition from its bacterial partners. The relationship is so intimate that the tube worm cannot survive without its bacteria, and the bacteria cannot survive outside the tube worm. Vent crabs and shrimp have also evolved specialized relationships with bacteria. Many species farm bacteria on their bodies, providing them with optimal conditions and then harvesting them for food. The yeti crab, which lives around deep sea vents in the South Pacific, has hairy claws covered in filamentous bacteria. It waves its claws in the vent water, providing the bacteria with chemical nutrients, and then combs the bacteria off its claws and eats them. It's a remarkable example of mutualism, where both partners benefit from the relationship. Vent fish, such as the vent eelpout, are able to tolerate much higher temperatures than most fish. They lurk at the edges of vent fields, feeding on vent shrimp, crabs, and other invertebrates. Their blood contains specialized proteins that remain functional at higher temperatures, and they have behavioral adaptations that help them thermoregulate, moving between warmer and cooler water as needed. Hydrothermal vent communities are ephemeral, existing only as long as the vent remains active. When a vent shuts down, the creatures living there must find a new vent or die. This means vent species must be capable of dispersing over long distances, a challenge in the vastness of the deep sea. Many vent species have larval stages that can drift in ocean currents for weeks or months, increasing their chances of finding a new vent. Recent genetic studies have shown that vent populations separated by hundreds or thousands of kilometers are still connected by gene flow, with larvae successfully traveling between distant vent fields. The discovery of vent communities revolutionized our understanding of life's possibilities. Before vents were discovered in 1977, all known life on Earth depended directly or indirectly on sunlight. The vents proved that life could exist independent of photosynthesis, relying instead on chemical energy. This discovery has profound implications for astrobiology. If life can thrive at Earth's hydrothermal vents, it could potentially thrive at vents on other worlds. Jupiter's moon Europa and Saturn's moon Enceladus both have subsurface oceans that likely contain hydrothermal vents. The possibility of life in these oceans, life based on chemosynthesis rather than photosynthesis, is taken seriously by scientists. Cold seeps represent another chemosynthetic ecosystem in the deep sea. These are areas where hydrocarbons, particularly methane, seep out of the seafloor. Methane-eating bacteria form the base of cold seep food webs, and they support communities of tube worms, clams, and mussels. Cold seep communities can persist for centuries or millennia, much longer than hydrothermal vent communities, because the seepage of hydrocarbons is generally steady over geological timescales. Some cold seep clams can live for over 200 years, making them among the longest-lived invertebrates known. The study of deep-sea creatures has practical applications beyond pure science. Many deep-sea organisms produce unique biochemicals that have potential pharmaceutical uses. Cone snails, which live in shallow tropical waters but have deep-sea relatives, produce powerful toxins that are being developed as painkillers, more potent than morphine but without the addictive properties. Deep-sea bacteria produce enzymes that remain stable under extreme conditions of pressure and temperature, making them valuable for industrial processes. The antifreeze proteins found in some deep-sea fish are being studied for use in preserving organs for transplant and in developing ice-resistant crops. Bioluminescence, so common in the deep sea, has also proven valuable. The genes responsible for producing light in deep-sea creatures have been isolated and used to create glowing tags for biological research. These tags allow scientists to track cell movements, gene expression, and protein interactions in real time. The widespread use of green fluorescent protein, or GFP, in biological research stems from work on bioluminescent jellyfish. Nobel Prizes have been awarded for this research, demonstrating that studying even the strangest creatures can yield profound benefits for humanity. The site's deep sea also holds clues to past climate changes and mass extinctions. The sediments on the ocean floor contain chemical signatures of ancient ocean conditions, including temperature, salinity, and carbon dioxide levels. By analyzing these sediments, scientists can reconstruct Earth's climate history going back millions of years. This information is crucial for understanding how climate systems work and for predicting future climate changes. The deep sea is not just a repository of strange life. It's a repository of Earth's history. Furthermore, the deep sea plays a critical role in regulating Earth's climate. The ocean absorbs about 30% of the carbon dioxide emitted by human activities. Much of this carbon dioxide ends up in the deep ocean, where it can remain sequestered for hundreds or thousands of years. The deep ocean also stores vast amounts of heat, acting as a thermal buffer that moderates surface temperatures. Without the deep ocean's capacity to absorb heat and carbon, Earth's climate would be far more volatile, and surface temperatures would be rising even faster than they currently are. The biological pump, the process by which organic material sinks from the surface to the deep sea, is a crucial component of the carbon cycle. When phytoplankton photosynthesize, they absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. When they die, they sink, taking that carbon with them. If this organic material reaches the deep sea before being decomposed, the carbon can remain locked away for centuries. Anything that affects the biological pump, whether it's warming temperatures, ocean acidification, or changes in ocean circulation, could have significant impacts on atmospheric carbon dioxide levels and global climate. The deep sea is also an important source of minerals and other resources. Manganese nodules, potato-sized lumps of metal-rich minerals, cover vast areas of the abyssal plain. These nodules contain manganese, nickel, copper, and cobalt, all valuable for modern technology. Mining companies are developing technologies to harvest these nodules, but there are significant concerns about the environmental impacts. The abyssal plain communities that live on and around these nodules are poorly understood, and removing the nodules could destroy habitats that took millions of years to develop. The question of whether and how to mine the deep sea is one of the most contentious environmental issues of our time. Methane hydrates, crystalline structures of methane trapped in ice, exist in vast quantities on the deep sea floor. These hydrates contain more carbon than all known fossil fuel reserves combined. They're stable at the low temperatures and high pressures of the deep sea. But if ocean temperatures rise or pressure decreases, they could destabilize and release methane into the atmosphere. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas, much more effective at trapping heat than carbon dioxide. A large release of methane from deep sea hydrates could trigger rapid climate warming, creating a positive feedback loop where warming releases more methane, which causes more warming. Understanding and monitoring methane hydrates is crucial for predicting future climate scenarios. The exploration of the deep sea continues to accelerate as technology improves. Modern ROVs can reach any depth in the ocean, equipped with high-definition cameras, robotic arms for collecting samples, and sensors that measure temperature, salinity, pressure, and chemical composition. These vehicles are controlled from ships on the surface, with pilots guiding them through the darkness using video feeds and sonar. ROVs have discovered hundreds of new species and documented behaviors never before observed. Autonomous underwater vehicles represent the next generation of deep-sea exploration. These robots can operate independently, following pre-programmed routes or making their own decisions based on what they encounter. AUVs can map the seafloor, track ocean currents, monitor volcanic activity, and even follow individual animals to study their behavior. Some AUVs can remain at sea for months, surfacing periodically to transmit data and receive new instructions. As artificial intelligence improves, AUVs will become even more capable, potentially leading to a revolution in our understanding of the deep sea. Manned submersibles still play a role in deep sea exploration, despite the risks and costs involved. There's something uniquely valuable about having a human observer in the deep, able to make real-time decisions about what to examine more closely, what samples to collect, and how to interpret what they're seeing. The deepest manned dives have reached the bottom of the Challenger Deep, over 10,900 meters below the surface. These dives required specially designed submersibles with titanium hulls capable of withstanding the crushing pressure. The humans inside these submersibles reported seeing fish, amphipods, and jellyfish even at maximum depth, confirming that life exists everywhere in the ocean. One of the most exciting recent developments in deep-sea exploration is the use of environmental DNA, or eDNA. This technique involves collecting water samples and analyzing them for traces of DNA shed by organisms in the area. Every time a fish swims by, it leaves behind skin cells, mucus, and waste, all of which contain DNA. By analyzing this DNA, scientists can determine what species are present in an area without ever seeing them directly. This is particularly valuable in the deep sea, where organisms are often rare and hard to observe. A single water sample can reveal dozens of species, including some that have never been seen before. The deep sea is also being explored through the use of deep-sea webcams, cameras permanently installed on the seafloor that stream live video to the internet. These cameras allow anyone with an internet connection to watch deep-sea life in real time. Scientists can monitor these streams for unusual events, such as the arrival of a whale fall or an eruption of a hydrothermal vent. Citizen scientists can help analyze footage, identifying species and documenting behaviors. This democratization of deep-sea exploration is bringing the abyss into people's homes, inspiring a new generation of marine biologists and ocean advocates. The psychological impact of the deep sea on humans is worth considering. There's something profoundly unsettling about the deep ocean, a primordial fear of the dark and the unknown. Horror writers and filmmakers have long drawn inspiration from the deep sea, creating monsters and scenarios that tap into our deepest fears. Films like The Abyss, Leviathan, and Underwater portray the deep sea as a hostile, alien environment where humans are out of their depth, literally and figuratively. These stories resonate because they're not entirely fiction. The deep sea is hostile to humans, and it is filled with creatures that look like they belong in nightmares. But this fear is also mixed with fascination. Humans are curious by nature, driven to explore and understand the unknown. The deep sea represents one of the last frontiers on Earth, a place where exploration can still lead to genuine discoveries. Every expedition finds new species, new behaviors, new ecosystems. The deep sea reminds us that Earth is not fully known, not completely mapped, not entirely tamed. There are still wild places, still mysteries, still wonders waiting to be discovered. The creatures of the deep sea also challenge our aesthetic sense. We are accustomed to thinking of nature as beautiful, to finding elegance and harmony in living things. But deep-sea creatures often strike us as ugly, grotesque, or horrifying. This creates a cognitive dissonance. How can evolution, which has produced butterflies and birds and flowers, also produce anglerfish and gulper eels and giant isopods? The answer is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and our eyes evolved to appreciate things relevant to our survival and reproduction. The features we find beautiful, symmetry, bright colors, smooth textures, are features associated with health and vitality in the environments where humans evolved. Deep-sea creatures evolved in entirely different environments, where different traits were advantageous. Their beauty exists, but it's a beauty we're not naturally equipped to perceive. Some people, particularly those who study these creatures professionally, do come to see them as beautiful. Once you understand the function of a viperfish's teeth, the elegance of an anglerfish's lure, or the efficiency of a gulper eel's feeding strategy, you can appreciate these creatures on their own terms. The creepiness fades, replaced by admiration for the solutions evolution has crafted to the challenges of deep-sea life. This is a learned appreciation, requiring knowledge and time, but it's no less real than our immediate appreciation of a sunset or a flower. The future of deep-sea research is bright, with new technologies and new questions driving continued exploration. We're beginning to understand how deep-sea communities respond to environmental changes, how they recover from disturbances, and how they've evolved over geological timescales. We're discovering that the deep sea is not uniform, not a single monotonous habitat, but a mosaic of different environments, each with its own characteristics and its own assemblage of species. Seamounts, underwater mountains that rise from the seafloor, host unique communities adapted to the increased currents and food availability. Submarine canyons funnel organic material from the shallow waters to the deep, creating pathways of enhanced productivity. Brine pools, super salty depressions on the seafloor, create extreme environments where only the most specialized creatures can survive. The deep sea is also proving to be more interconnected than previously thought. Creatures don't just inhabit a single depth. They move between zones, undertaking vertical migrations that span thousands of meters. Whales dive to great depths to feed on squid and fish, then return to the surface to breathe. Sperm whales regularly dive to over 2,000 meters and can reach depths exceeding 3,000 meters, holding their breath for over 90 minutes. These dives connect the surface and the deep, transferring energy and nutrients between zones. When whales die and sink to the bottom, they create whale falls, oases of resources that can support specialized communities for decades. A whale fall is a remarkable phenomenon that deserves detailed examination. When a large whale dies and sinks to the abyssal plain, it represents a massive input of food to a usually food-poor environment. A single whale carcass can contain tens of tons of organic material, enough to feed deep sea scavengers for years. The whale fall goes through several stages of decomposition, each supporting different communities of organisms. In the mobile scavenger stage, hagfish, sleeper sharks, and other large scavengers strip the soft tissues from the bones. This stage can last for months or years, depending on the size of the whale and the abundance of scavengers. Next comes the enrichment opportunist stage, where the seafloor around the whale becomes enriched with organic material from decomposition. This attracts polychaete worms, crustaceans, and mollusks that feed on the enriched sediments. This stage can last for years. Finally, in the sulfophilic stage, bacteria colonize the whale's bones, breaking down the lipids stored in the bone marrow. This process releases hydrogen sulfide, the same chemical that fuels hydrothermal vent communities. Specialized bone-eating worms called osedacs colonize the bones, using symbiotic bacteria to digest the lipids. Clams and other sulfur-loving organisms also colonize the bones, creating a miniature chemosynthetic ecosystem that can last for decades. Whale falls are so important to deep-sea ecology that some species may depend on them for survival. These species travel from whale fall to whale fall, seeking out these islands of resources in the vast desert of the abyss. Before whaling drastically reduced whale populations, whale falls were probably much more common, creating a network of stepping stones across the deep sea. The reduction in whale populations may have affected deep-sea communities in ways we're only beginning to understand. The deep sea is also connected to human activities in ways that might not be immediately obvious. Deep sea fishing has depleted populations of species like orange rofi, which can live for over 100 years and doesn't reach sexual maturity until age 20 or older. These life history characteristics made orange rofi extremely vulnerable to overfishing, and many populations collapsed before management measures could be implemented. The lesson is clear. Deep sea species cannot be exploited like shallow water species. Their slow growth, late maturation, and low reproductive rates mean that overfishing can quickly drive them to commercial extinction or even biological extinction. Pollution reaches the deep sea as well. Plastic waste, particularly microplastics, has been found in the deepest trenches. These tiny particles are ingested by deep sea creatures, entering the food web and potentially causing harm at every level. Persistent organic pollutants, chemicals that resist breakdown and accumulate in fatty tissues, reach high concentrations in deep sea predators, even though these creatures live thousands of meters below the surface. The deep sea is not isolated from human impacts. It's connected to the surface through falling particles, ocean currents, and migrating animals. Climate change is altering the deep sea in subtle but significant ways. As the surface ocean warms, it holds less oxygen, and this oxygen-depleted water eventually sinks to depth. Expanding oxygen minimum zones could squeeze the depth range where many species can survive, forcing them into narrower bands of suitable habitat. Ocean acidification, caused by absorption of atmospheric carbon dioxide, is lowering the pH of seawater throughout the ocean, including in the deep sea. This could affect calcifying organisms, those that build shells or skeletons from calcium carbonate, making it harder for them to maintain their structures. Changes in ocean circulation patterns could alter the delivery of food to the deep sea, causing some areas to become more productive while others become more barren. The ethical implications of deep sea exploitation are only beginning to be seriously considered. Should we mine the deep sea for minerals when we don't fully understand the ecosystems we might destroy? Should we allow deep sea fishing to continue when we know many species cannot sustain harvest? How do we balance human needs for resources against the intrinsic value of deep sea ecosystems? These are not easy questions, and they become more urgent as human population grows and demand for resources increases. There's also the question of who owns the deep sea. Most of the deep ocean is beyond national jurisdiction, in areas called the high seas or the area. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea designates the area as the common heritage of mankind, meaning that resources extracted from the deep sea should benefit all humanity, not just the countries or companies doing the extraction. However, implementing this principle in practice has proven difficult, and there are ongoing debates about how to regulate deep sea mining, fishing, and other activities in international waters. The deep sea also raises philosophical questions about consciousness and sentience. Do deep sea creatures experience pain? Do they have subjective experiences? These questions are difficult enough when considering surface animals, but they become even more challenging when applied to creatures so alien from us. A giant squid has a complex nervous system and large brain, suggesting sophisticated information processing, but its mind, if it has one, would be utterly foreign to human experience. We cannot assume that consciousness requires a brain structured like ours, or that sentience is limited to vertebrates. The more we learn about animal cognition, the more we realize that consciousness may be far more widespread than we once thought, existing in forms we don't yet recognize. This leads to another consideration: our responsibility toward creatures we barely understand. If we grant that deep sea creatures might have some form of sentience, some capacity for suffering, then we have a moral obligation to minimize the harm we cause them. This doesn't mean we must never disturb the deep sea, but it means we should do so thoughtfully, carefully, and only when necessary. We should study these creatures not just to satisfy curiosity or to find exploitable resources, but to understand and appreciate life in all its diversity. The deep sea reminds us of our place in the universe. Humans are surface dwellers, creatures of sunlight and air, ill-equipped to survive in most of the biosphere. We occupy a thin skin of habitable space on a planet where most of the volume is either molten rock, solid rock, or water too deep for us to naturally enter. We are, in a very real sense, peripheral to life on Earth. The deep sea contains more habitable space than all terrestrial environments combined, and it's filled with creatures that have never seen sunlight and never will. Our perspective on life is necessarily limited, shaped by our particular evolutionary history and ecological niche. The deep sea challenges us to expand that perspective, to recognize forms of life and ways of living that don't match our templates. As we reflect on our journey through the depths, certain themes emerge. Adaptation is universal. Every environment, no matter how extreme, is inhabited by creatures perfectly suited to it. Scarcity drives innovation. The food-poor deep sea has given rise to some of the most remarkable feeding strategies in nature. Isolation breeds diversity. Separated communities evolve independently, creating unique species found nowhere else. Pressure shapes form. The physical conditions of the deep sea constrain what body plans are possible. Darkness defines existence. Life without light is fundamentally different from life in light, relying on different senses and different strategies. And through it all runs the thread of deep time, the understanding that these creatures and ecosystems are the products of millions of years of evolution, countless generations adapting incrementally to their environment. The creepiness of deep sea creatures is, in the end, a reflection of their perfection. They are exactly what they need to be to survive in their environment. Every feature that strikes us as bizarre or horrifying serves a purpose, solves a problem, enhances survival or reproduction. The anglerfish's bioluminescent lure is creepy because it's so effective at luring prey to their doom. The viperfish's huge teeth are disturbing because they're so efficient at grasping slippery prey in total darkness. The gulper eel's enormous mouth is unsettling because it allows the eel to eat prey much larger than itself, crucial in a realm where meals are rare. These creatures aren't designed to comfort human observers. They're designed by evolution to thrive in the most challenging environment on Earth. And they do thrive. Despite the crushing pressure, the frigid temperatures, the eternal darkness, and the scarcity of food, life has found ways to not just survive, but flourish in the deep sea. The biomass of deep sea creatures is enormous, representing a significant fraction of all animal life on Earth. The diversity is staggering, with new species being discovered on every expedition. The adaptations are ingenious, showcasing evolution's capacity for innovation. The deep sea is not a lifeless wasteland. It's a vibrant ecosystem, different from surface ecosystems but no less important, no less worthy of study and protection. As technology continues to improve, we will undoubtedly make more discoveries, find more species, and answer more questions about life in the deep. But we will also likely uncover more mysteries, as each answer seems to generate new questions. How do deep-sea creatures communicate over long distances? How do they find food in such a vast, dark space? How do populations remain genetically connected across thousands of kilometers of deep ocean? How will deep-sea ecosystems respond to continued climate change? How many species remain undiscovered? These questions and countless others await future researchers. The deep sea is a reminder that Earth still holds secrets, that exploration and discovery are still possible, and that the natural world is far stranger and more wonderful than we can imagine. The creatures of the abyss, creepy though they may appear, are testaments to life's resilience and creativity. They prove that life can adapt to any environment where liquid water exists and some source of energy is available. They demonstrate that evolution has no preferred outcome, no ideal form, only whatever works in a given environment. They show us that our intuitions about what is normal or natural are limited by our experience, and that expanding our perspective reveals a universe far richer and more diverse than we expect. So why do deep-sea creatures get creepier the deeper you go? Because the deeper you go, the more extreme the environment becomes, and the more extreme the environment, the more extreme the adaptations required to survive in it. Because scarcity intensifies with depth, and scarcity drives evolution toward efficiency, even when that efficiency takes forms that disturb surface-dwelling observers. Because the deep sea is fundamentally alien to humans, and what is alien is often perceived as creepy. Because these creatures embody solutions to problems we've never faced, using strategies we would never conceive. Because they remind us that life is not limited to forms we find comfortable or familiar. And ultimately, because creepiness is in the eye of the beholder, and our eyes were never meant to see the wonders of the abyss. The creatures of the deep sea are not creepy to each other. They are normal, natural, and necessary. They are exactly what life looks like when it evolves in the dark. And that, perhaps, is the most profound lesson of all. The journey into the deep sea is ultimately a journey into ourselves, into our fears and curiosities, our limitations and aspirations. When we look at a viperfish or an anglerfish, we're not just seeing a fish, we're seeing our own expectations of what life should look like being challenged and overturned. We're confronting the reality that Earth is not designed for human comfort, that most of the planet exists in states that would kill us instantly, and that life has adapted to these states in ways that seem impossible until we see them with our own eyes. The deep sea teaches humility. It reminds us that for all our technology, for all our scientific knowledge, we are visitors in these depths, not residents. We can only observe, study, and try to understand. We cannot live there, cannot thrive there, cannot even survive there without extensive artificial support. The creatures of the deep are the natives, the permanent residents, the true masters of this realm. They have earned their place through millions of years of evolution, through countless generations of adaptation, through the slow, patient work of natural selection optimizing them for their environment. Every descent into the deep sea is an act of exploration in the truest sense. It's not just about collecting data or discovering species, though those are important. It's about expanding human knowledge, pushing the boundaries of what we understand about life and the world. It's about satisfying that fundamental human drive to know what's over the horizon, beyond the mountains, beneath the waves. The deep sea is our planet's final frontier, and exploring it connects us to a long tradition of human exploration and discovery. As we conclude, we must acknowledge that our understanding of the deep sea is still in its infancy. We've explored less of the deep ocean than we have of the moon's surface. Vast areas remain completely unknown, never visited by human eyes or instruments. The species we've discovered are likely a small fraction of those that exist. The behaviors we've observed are snapshots, brief glimpses into lives that unfold over years or decades in the eternal darkness. We're only beginning to understand how deep sea ecosystems function, how energy flows through them, how species interact, how communities assemble and change over time. But what we have learned is remarkable enough. We've learned that life is far more adaptable than we imagined, capable of thriving under conditions we once thought impossible. We've learned that Earth's biosphere extends to the very deepest parts of the ocean, that there is no depth too great, no pressure too high, no darkness too complete for life to exist. We've learned that evolution is endlessly creative, finding solutions to problems in ways that continually surprise and amaze us. We've learned that the deep sea is not separate from the surface world, but connected to it through biological, chemical, and physical processes.